on the touchline, I just think he transmits an awful lot of anxiety to the players, and you can see it at the Emirates. He is very, very engaged with what's going on the pitch, but sometimes it's a bit too much. And I think those moments come sometimes too early in games. It's almost like very early on, they're almost so stressful and trying to score a goal very quickly and and then after that, it's almost like, right, we scored, now we can't concede, we can't lose. And I think they've got, and obviously it's part of being a maturing team and winning something. And as John says, I completely agree, he has to win a major trophy this year. And I say, once they get over the line, if they get over the line, it will make a huge difference to them. It'll be transformative to Arsenal once they win a major trophy again. I think it will be transformative. But it's that anxiety and that desperation, as you talk about, that can they do it? And I have to admit, I do slightly fear for them. I fear that it's been so good in some ways up until this point, top of the Champions League table as well, but still haven't won anything yet. So it's a long way to go, and I would worry a lot if I was them at Manchester City, because they're looking really strong.
Maybe Arsenal are having their bad patch right now and they're still winning, because let's be honest, the Wolves game was really bad, but they won it. Last week at Everton, I was at Everton and they weren't convincing, but they won. Yesterday, they weren't great, but they won. So we all remember, 4 or 5 weeks ago, that I think they beat Tottenham to 6 points clear, and everyone's saying Arsenal running away with it. This is the bad patch, and they're still top of the league. So perhaps this is a positive, that the weather in the storm. And I know they've got a tough January coming up. They've got Villa on Tuesday, like you say. If they win that game, then all of a sudden that's a big
It's
moment.
one of two things, isn't it? It's either that, and I agree with Mark, it could well be that, because every team has a wobble, don't they, during the season. You can't just seamlessly go on and win every single game. But at the start of the season, we're talking about Liverpool in a similar way, weren't we? When they were winning all those games, we were thinking, Liverpool just getting over the line, and then it suddenly fell away. So it could go that way as well.
It's a different narrative of Liverpool. It was almost like they've won the title, so they're winning 5 on the bounce. And even though they weren't playing well, it's because Liverpool, that's what they do. With Arsenal, it's like, this is what Arsenal do, they're wobbling. But beat Villa, right, that's a tough call, because Villa are on a great run at the moment. But I mean, I do think that Arsenal have got a tough January, especially at home. They've got Villa this week, then they've got Liverpool, then they've got Man United. So the next 3 home games are really big. But come through January, if you're still unbeaten at home, then all of a sudden, maybe this was the wobble, and maybe they're kind of showing the kind of the bottle right now. So I still think Arsenal are the best squad in the league. Yeah. And I think we've kind of put a little bit too much emphasis on Man City because it's Pep. If they lose Erling Haaland, then Man City are a different team completely. So I just think if you're an Arsenal fan, just calm down, stay calm, and it might just turn itself out in a positive way.
John, in your paper, Neil McClellan, who's at the Emirates, says the good news for Arsenal fans is that the Gunners held off a late Brighton fight back to return to the top of the table. The bad news is that there's potentially another 5 months of this nerve-jangling anxiety to go this season. Now, Jason mentioned about Mikel Arteta and his demeanour, and maybe that's adding to the anxiety. I don't know what you think, but whenever I've been at his news conferences, you're there every week like I am, I've noticed something different with Mikel Arteta this time, and he seems to be a little bit more relaxed. Maybe at odds to what Jason is saying.
Before John says that, sorry, I agree with him. Press conferences, I'm talking about on the touchline. That's what I'm talking about. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to agree with you. I think his general demeanour has changed. Yeah. And I also think he has improved. We're starting from a low base here, in terms of behavioural standards, terms. But I do actually think then that he has... There's no doubt about it. When you are too anxious, when you are too het up, when you are screaming and, being too overzealous on that touchline, it resonates to players. It really does.
But Jurgen Klopp did it at Liverpool.
They embraced it, didn't they?
Exactly.
And Jurgen Klopp was a brilliant manager for Liverpool. But I think with Mikel Arteta,
You think it works for Arsenal?
I think it makes them nervous. But I must say, I think the point I was going to make, stop boys, basically, is that I actually think he's dramatically improved that. Whether you like that or not, I still think he's over anxious on the touchline. But from where he's come from, I think it's one of his big improvements as a manager.
No, I agree with that.
This season, look, and I tell you where that's borne out, is borne out in their disciplinary record, which is yellow cards is a sort of kind of a little bit mid-table, but they haven't had a sending off. Well, last season, injuries and sendings off, you could argue, completely undermined their title challenge. Well, they haven't had one this season. I think that's testament to Arteta's improvement, and I do actually think that's perhaps a little bit underestimated and undervalued. I still think he could calm down a bit, but if he calms down, do you lose Arteta's passion, enthusiasm and the drive and the coach that he is? Honestly, over the course of the piece, basically, over the 6 years, he's done a remarkable job. But I do think ultimately he will, and he knows this, he'll be judged on what he wins and judged on what he, achieves as a manager. And that's got to be trophies. But I do think Mark's right. They're basically top of the Premier League, top of the Champions League. But the nerves. If last season it was injuries, we've got a bit of injuries this season. If this season they don't win it, I think it'll be down to nerves and tension.
Mark, just picking up on what you said, maybe this is Arsenal's sticky patch. Riyadh Al-Samurai in the Mail on Sunday says if Arsenal are to finally hold their nerve in the title race, then Mikel Arteta ought to spend the entirety of next summer writing notes of thanks to those who helped them through these festive weeks. Own goals are the gifts that keep on giving. If you look at their last 4 games in all competitions, the 2-1 victory against Wolves, 2 own goals. It was a penalty that separated them from Everton. There was an own goal, albeit in the Carabao Cup, against Crystal Palace. And the decisive goal, what ended up being the decisive goal against Brighton, was an own goal as well. What should we read into that, if anything?
Well, I think what we read into that is the fact that they're still getting results. You know, every team has most teams in normal title-winning seasons have a wobble. They have a difficult period. And I think this is Arsenal's now. And I think, had it gone the other way, had they lost those games or drawn those games, then we could say that the nerves have been affray. But I just think it's easy with Arsenal because I think we've all been to the Emirates and it can be an edgy stadium. The fans, they're very quick to, not turn, but they're very quick to get anxious. So it's an easy narrative to play into it that Arsenal fans are nervous, it's going to cost them a title. I don't know. I just think that it shows a character that they've got that they can get over the line of these games. And you talk about Arteta's, I won't say antics on the touchline, but I think what it is with Arteta, I think he knows that he still hasn't got a player on the pitch who can do that for him. So, you know, you go back to the classic captains, you know, the Roy Keanes at Man United, even, you know, Van Dijk at Liverpool. The manager can stand back and know that he's got a guy on the pitch who can do all that kind of ranting and raving and organise on the pitch. I still think Arsenal are quite naive sometimes on the pitch, quite young. I mean, they're not the youngest team, but they have a bit of inexperience. They haven't got like a Kevin De Bruyne that Man City had that could just guide them through games. I think that's Declan Rice's potential role. Maybe Martin Odegaard as captain, but they're still not quite there yet. So I think Arteta has to kind of almost micromanage from the touchline because he needs someone on the pitch to do it for him. So I think everyone at Arsenal needs to calm down a bit.
John,
it's still going well.
John, we're talking about these own goals, and I guess it's shining a light on Arsenal's attacking players, and in particular, the man we've spoken about throughout this season in Victor Gyökeres. Not just his performance yesterday, but just generally, when everybody is fit, because you know Kai Havertz is coming back, Gabriel Jesus has just returned, Mikel Merino's played a role up front as well. When everybody is fit, is he the guy for you that's going to spearhead Arsenal's title challenge for the rest of the season?
No, I don't think he can do it. I honestly, I worry about him a bit, and I think that he, in fairness to him, £64 million, and basically, you know, there's a lot of Arsenal fans saying, well, he does a great job for the team and he works hard. My word, you expect a bit more from that. If you really go all in, as Arsenal did, for a striker, you expect goals too, and he's just not scoring enough. He's not contributing enough to the game. Look at his few number of touches that, again, he was barely involved yesterday, and he's really struggling, I think. In fairness to him, before he got injured at Burnley, and at that point I thought, here we go, he's scoring, and he scored at Burnley, and he was leading the charge, he was leading the press, and we think, OK, this is what it's going to be about. He was a kind of a real sort of kind of bull in the china shop, really working hard and sort of leading the press, and basically also scoring and then contributing to the team. And since he's come back from Burnley, bearing in mind he didn't have a pre-season, in fairness to him, there's a few sort of kind of strikers obviously struggling from that aspect this season. But I worry about him. And I think Arteta's kind of caught in this place where he is putting him in because he could see that he was realising his potential and is sticking with him to kind of get him that opportunity to get back to where he was and where he was threatening to be. But I actually think at the same time it's a mistake because Gabriel Jesus comes on, looks much better, he looks sharp, he looks quick, he looks, you know, very skillful, his touch. And I think Kai Havertz will still be, when fit again, will be Arteta's first choice number 9. I really do. I don't think it's worked for Gyökeres yet. And I think of all the big signings and the statement signings in the summer, that's the one under the microscope. It's always going to be like that with the centre forward. Has he got potential to turn it round? I think so. But I look at him at times and he just looks sluggish and slow. I don't think he is. But when you're struggling like that form-wise, my word, you look at it on the pitch.
Jason, doesn't seem to be the same issues if you're Manchester City, because the
Sure.
goals now, whereas before we were talking about...
With the dual aim of revenge and creating clearer daylight at the top of the Premier League summit, leaders Arsenal welcome third-placed Aston Villa for matchday 19's high-profile clash at the Emirates Stadium on Tuesday. The Gunners face the same opposition that handed them their most recent defeat, with the Villains snatching a 2-1 victory with the final kick of the game in the reverse fixture in Birmingham. Since that setback, Arsenal have gone 5 games unbeaten across all competitions, including victories in all 3 league matches during that run, most recently grinding out a 2-1 success over Brighton and Hove Albion on Saturday. That win allowed Arsenal to return to the summit after Manchester City's short-lived move to the top earlier in the matchday, and another success on Tuesday would stretch their lead over Villa to 6 points, while potentially opening a 5-point gap ahead of City. Here, Sports Mole rounds up Arsenal's latest injury and suspension news ahead of their meeting with Villa, who secured a comeback 2-1 win away at Chelsea over the weekend. Jurrien Timber is another recent concern, having landed awkwardly during Arsenal's EFL Cup penalty shootout victory earlier in the week. Although he was involved at the weekend, the defender will still need to be assessed ahead of kickoff to confirm whether he is fit to feature. Ben White picked up a hamstring issue during Arsenal's win over Wolverhampton Wanderers in mid-December and is expected to remain sidelined until around the middle of January. Teenage prospect Max Dowman suffered ankle ligament damage during an under-21s friendly earlier this month, with the 15-year-old facing several weeks on the sidelines as he works towards full fitness. Christian Mosquinero was forced off during Arsenal's clash with Brentford on December 3rd after sustaining an ankle injury and is not expected to return until mid-January. Riccardo Calafiori was withdrawn during the warm-up ahead of the Brighton match after feeling discomfort following a training session the previous day. The Italian defender will need to pass a late fitness test to determine his availability, leaving him a major doubt for Tuesday. After spending close to 4 months recovering from a knee injury, Kai Havertz has returned to full training and narrowly missed out on the matchday squad last weekend. Arteta has suggested that his comeback is a matter of days, meaning a return on Tuesday is possible, although his involvement is yet to be confirmed.